And there it kicks off. So welcome everyone. We have people still trickling in. I see a lot of people joining us slowly but surely, attendees joining us today. Really excited for today's panel, which is all about focused on building corporate partnerships and for nonprofits, specifically fundraisers, how they can establish relationships, how they can build meaningful relationships and partnerships with corporations across the US. So joining us today on our panel, I'm really excited because we focus, especially at Cadenza, having really live practitioners who are our guests. So we have a star-studded cast of really experts who their background has not only been in development, but they've specialized in building partnerships with foundations, with corporations, with even federal partnerships as well. So we're excited to be able to talk about a very pertinent topic because we know as there have been shifts and changes, we're not going to beat around the elephant in the room of there's a lot happening on the federal level. And we know board members, executive directors, fundraisers are being asked, how are we going to diversify our fundraising sources? How are we going to build new relationships and strategic partnerships? And how do we make that not just ideas and words, but really tactable and tangible advice? And that's what we're focused on today. So joining us today, we have Milan Ball from the Giving Compass. We have Jen Wassam for Generous Living, specifically her new consulting firm, and Dean Ronzoni from Leave No Trace. So I'm excited to kick it off. We're going to go through some quick, brief introductions. If you guys could just give us a 30-second introduction on your names, your titles, where you're based out of, and a little bit of background on your organization and your experience in the both development as well as corporate giving space. So Dean, I'll kick it off with you if you don't mind kicking us off here, and then we'll go from Jen and Milan.
Great. Thanks for having us, Zach. So my name is Dean Ronzoni. I'm the Director of Corporate Development at Leave No Trace. Leave No Trace is a nonprofit organization. We're 31 years old this year, and we teach people about how to connect with the outdoors and also how to protect the outdoors. So our product is education. And I've been at Leave No Trace. I actually started as an intern, and I've done some membership work through Leave No Trace. My current role is corporate partnerships. So that's really where I've spent my 15 years at Leave No Trace, not only bringing in corporate dollars, but also managing our corporate accounts, keeping them happy with the work that we're doing, connected to the work we're doing, and then also finally having them as a voice for our organization as well.
Awesome.
Great. My name is Jen Wassam. I'm the founder and CEO of Generous Living Philanthropy. I have been in nonprofit for almost 2 decades. I have led corporate account teams throughout the nation for national organizations. I'm passionate about relationship. And I had a focus on the Fortune 50 accounts as well as CPG accounts for Walmart. So I'm very excited to be here and looking forward to learning from everyone.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Milan Ball. I'm excited to be a part of today's discussion. I'm currently serving as the Director of Development and Philanthropic Partnerships at Giving Compass. At Giving Compass, we believe that education is the foundation for meaningful generosity because the data shows that donors who know more do more. And so we exist to provide donor education on the issues that people care about most and bring visibility to nonprofits that are making an impact. We do this through sector collaboration, leveraging AI, data, behavioral science, and ethicists to level the playing field for what future technology promises. Prior to Giving Compass, I was working for an organization called Be Nimble Foundation based in Indianapolis, and that's where I still am. And I completed Master's of Philanthropic Studies at the Lilly School of Philanthropy, which I always have to plug anytime I'm speaking. So with that, I will kick it back to you, Zach.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thank you everyone of our panelists for joining us today. I want this to be a fun and engaging conversation. We don't want any fluff. We want real candid advice. And I think we always start off when you hear advice like that. Jen, I'll start with you of we want to diversify funding. We want to build more corporate sponsorships. How do you think when organizations and fundraisers are getting this advice, where do you think is the best place for them to start? And where do you feel like are just some of the myths, if you will, of
Mm.
what it means to really build those relationships with your partners.
Yeah. So I think the biggest myth that I encounter um, on a daily basis is that these are very quick relationships, right? Like it's going to happen overnight. So just because the organization has decided that this is our new direction, well, it's just going to happen, right? Well, that's not the case. And we're not the only one approaching these corporate partners, right? They are inundated with now a lot of new nonprofits coming to them and saying, hey, now we want to partner, right? We need to diversify, right? So to remember that great relationships take a great amount of time. And that if you're just starting, like if this is go time, right? Then add about 9 to 18 months to your actual time that you think, you're going to see the money come in. But I think often there's just this really unrealistic expectations around the turnaround.
I think that's so true. And I think one thing that we often hear when it comes to just the myths within the sector is you mentioned the timeline there, but and it comes to the timeline, I know, Dean, as you had just mentioned, of someone who's seen the evolution of, going from intern to now have knowing this for over a decade. What maybe are some of the biggest maybe misconceptions that you've had internally kind of as you've grown at Leave No Trace throughout the years, but kind of staying on this myth busting theme that you've been surprised by when it comes to just developing these relationships?
Yeah. I'd say one of the hardest things that I hear from a lot of other NGOs is that it's hard to raise money. It's hard to ask for money. And I personally don't think it's hard to ask for the money because that money fuels all of our work, right? And we need to fund the organizations that we all work for. So yes, it can be scary. It can be sometimes challenging because for me, my asks are always unique. They're always different. So it's to find the fit with the organization, not necessarily saying, I need $20,000 to do this. Can you help? And so I feel like their experience and practice really makes perfect in that field, and it creates a comfort level. And I've seen it even with our internal employees. People will say, "Wow, I don't know how you do this job. Seems so challenging." And I say the same thing to them. I have no idea how you keep organized and do your job. And so it's kind of that misconception. So that's one of the myths that I hear over and over when I'm doing a presentation at a trade show or whatnot, is how to do that. And hopefully we can answer some of those questions today, but that's my quick answer.
I love that. Well, I'm going to toss it back to you, Milan, too, because we're talking mindset here. And that was Dean's definitely something I picked up on right away of having that, zero sum, or I should say non-zero sum mindset where we're really adding to the pot. We're really doing good work and getting our awareness and message in front of more people. Milan, what are your thoughts, I guess, right now of kind of your experience?
Yeah, I could not agree more with Jen and Dean. In Jen's case on timeline, that is absolutely, I think, one of the biggest myths or misconceptions. I mean, absolutely, you need to add about 12 to 18 months on what your expectations are. And I say that having been in the seat of being the first development hire for 2 organizations. And so when you're building the infrastructure for fundraising and you have 2 scenarios where either you're inheriting a lot of relationships on other people on your staff or your board, on in that case, but then in another case, developing relationships essentially from scratch. And those are 2 totally different landscapes that I think, depending on which camp you're sitting in, and it might be a mixture of the 2, you might have very high expectations from your team or your board to create those new relationships while you're managing the ones that you've already inherited. I think spending some time with those realities is really important. And then in Dean's case, I love what you said about comfort, because and we've talked about this, Zach, that I like to think of fundraising, it's more of an invitation than it really is an ask. And when you're inviting someone to be a part of something, you have a certain level of comfort and familiarity with that person. And so I think the same is true in all types of fundraising that you're doing, which some of the best and strongest relationships are built with time, which goes back to Jen's point.
Yeah. Well, I love that. I want to keep this a little spicy for us right now too, because we know fundraisers are getting asked this question of, hey, in the next 3 to 6, what are we going to do next quarter? Right? How are we going to bring fundraising in this year? And guess what? March is already getting wrapped up. And knowing that that timeline is, I'm going to give a quick rapid fire. We're going to go Jen, Milan, Dean, if we will. What do you say when you get this ask? Like, how do you set those expectations and keep us grounded in reality? So I think sometimes it is like the internal politics as well. It's not even just the effort of fundraising. It is managing your internal expectations as a fundraiser, but communicating those expectations across the board. So a little quick role play, Sash, of I'm a president of the board and I come to you as the development director in a meeting and say, what are we going to do this year to build some new corporate strategic partnerships?
So my response would be, who on the board is going to walk alongside me and do that? Because I think it's very easy when you're in a leadership position and a board position to say, you need to do this, and not having an understanding of actually how hard it is, right? And so what I find is that being able to bring in some champions from the board, and it makes a development director feel not so alone, right? But it also educates the board on, this is not as easy as you just think it is. I'm just not going to fire off an email to Walmart and get $25,000 next week, right? And so part of that is educating our leadership as well on the expectations, on timeline, on difficulty, on what's realistic, what's not. And then what that does is it gives support to the development staff, but it also kind of evens the playing field and makes conversations a lot easier between leadership and development.
Love it. Dean, I'll pass it to you now. Or no, Milan. Who was next? Milan, Dean.
I'll jump
Over
in there.
Milan.
Yeah, Jen took the words out of my mouth as far as the board participation. And that is also not completely easy. I think it's easier said than done for some organizations that might not have that culture quite yet. I think resources like BoardSource that you can go to for, best principles for governance and how to work with your board and develop that culture where they can really provide support. I would also say that going into those conversations with your board members with just very clear expectations, and also similarly that invitational piece of it is some of the work that you also have to do internally. So one of the things that I've done in, across roles is, we have worked with, if I don't know if your organizations of those in the audience have worked with like get gift strategies, like who do you know who's in your network that like if I give you a goal of five folks that you can introduce us to is just a basic stepping stone, that's low hanging fruit to just start to exercise that skill of inviting them to participate in the process. I would also say that, so we work with gift range charts. I think that's just a general industry practice, but if your organization does not work with them, to understand what exactly are the missing pieces in your fundraising efforts that you can plug in, I think that helps with the vetting process for prospecting opportunities. And so, how many gifts do you need at a certain level to be able to reach the goal that you're setting for yourself? I think when you're able to educate the board on that level of detail, it also makes it less scary with how many prospects you might need to be working for or soliciting, and then also understanding the mix of resources that you need to accomplish the goal.
I like that a lot.
Wow, how am I going to come up with a different answer? Because I definitely want to echo, but I'll go a little different on this. I totally agree with both of your answers. I think support, not even just from the board, but from the executive director and any of your bosses and above senior leadership. It shouldn't just fall onus on you. Yes, you're probably the one that's going to have to report on it and work extra hard to bring in additional funding. We just saw it. We received some federal funding. We are not federally funded, but we have some grants out there that have been ongoing, and we don't know if they're going to come in. We don't know what the government's going to allow some of our partners to do. So like Forest Service and National Park Service and those types of partnerships. So we have to pivot. And I'm going to be trying to raise additional money. I am trying to raise additional funding. Luckily enough, we've got a board and a staff that is supportive of my work. And it's not just here's the paperwork, here's what we need you to raise, here's the dollar amount. It's, hey, how can we do this together? And it's not even just me. We're talking on our individual membership team, our grants team. It's bringing everyone into the fold. So you're not just taking ownership, but you can also bounce ideas off other team members. It is a very tricky situation to be in, but also I think cultivating your board is definitely big time on that. It is very challenging to go in and create a new relationship, and Jen said it right at the start of this. It takes months and months, even sometimes years, to establish a relationship. So how are you going to do it by midsummer? And a way to speed up that process is to work with board members, even if you have family, know someone. You can speed that process up, because I think of it as like speed dating. You start working with various companies and you start talking to them and getting to know one another, but you already have a connection. You already can skip some of that process.
I love it. I think that's so helpful in so many different ways. And I know Leave No Trace actually does a phenomenal job with their corporate sponsorships, and has a high percentage of your funding comes from corporate sponsorships. I want to talk a little bit about when it comes to building those relationships, and when it comes to, Dean, I know that something that you guys do really well is like how customized each one of your packages is with each one of your partners. So how do you almost like take some of the layers outside of it? One, what do some of those initial outreaches look like? And how do you go from that initial point of engagement to crafting something that feels very personal to the corporation that you're building that partnership with?
Yeah, it does take time, but like I said, just pairing off my last answer, if you have that introduction, and it could be from anybody, let's just use a board member per se. I work with our board very heavily on who do they know, and in that, like starting to get them to know about your work too, because not all board members just walk in, especially new board members, know what a development director is doing. You're educating them, you're teaching them about some other partnerships, case studies. I present case studies all the time at our board meetings, because then they start to get the understanding of how I operate. And I want them to help me, not me operate directly how they want to operate. So there's a little bit of coaching in that too, because we've had success. So I'm sticking with my model until it stops working, and then we'll pivot, because we always pivot every single year. And it is in the relationship building. Typically, when I start talking to a company, I want to hear them speak. I want to hear what their initiatives are. We work with a lot of marketing directors, a lot of founders of companies, because they have the passion. They're interested. They might have reached out to us, or we reached out to them, but it's understanding what they need and what they want. I don't have any benefits. None of them are written down. I have an engagement guide that shows examples of things we've done in the past that have been successful, and things that we're experts in, because I want them to see the possibilities. I want their minds turning just as much as mine. And then I create decks, and I create a package exclusively for that partner. Every single one of them is exclusive, because they need that custom. I work with several different down jacket manufacturers. Every single one of those has a different type of partnership. I don't feel good doing the same partnership with either of them. I don't think they would feel good about it either. And they all want something different, which makes it unique. It makes it fun. That's why I've been here for 15 years, because we're able to always make something fun and different and exciting. And instead of just stale, and here's the logo, and here's a boilerplate language, and we get to live on your website. Like, cool, that's part of it, but it's not in the meat and potatoes. It's not the what's going to keep them coming back, what's going to create longevity. Because as much as I hate doing it, I don't like one and done partnerships. I don't think they value anyone, and I always recommend that we don't do that. Now, sometimes companies want to do that, and that's the only project they want to work on, but it doesn't allow their consumers to understand what they actually care about. So that's kind of how I try to operate and make the customality there.
So good. Well, I know you said a few think points, so Jen, I want to give you the chance to hop in there as well.
Yeah, so I love what you said. I think the worst thing a nonprofit can do, one of the worst things a nonprofit can do with a corporate partner is go in there with a pitch deck and say, okay, well, you know, you can be a platinum or a silver or a gold. And, you know, with that, you know, you get like your logo on our website and then, you know, and 3 shout outs a year on social media. And it's just not the way to go about it. Like, don't even take a pitch deck in there. Like, just go in and just talk, just get to know them, understand what are their pillars, right? Because a lot of organizations now, thankfully, are moving in the direction of our 3 strategic pillars are, you know, feeding, homelessness, and international aid. Okay, right? And so you know very clearly as a nonprofit, we either fit or we don't, right? And if you don't, go find a different partner. That's okay because there are plenty of partners that this org can work with. But go in, ask open-ended questions, and learn. That is your job in building these relationships, especially in the beginning. The less you talk, the better, right? Go in, find out what's important to them. What do their associates need? What's their strategy? What are they missing? They're going to tell you. And so you can listen for what they're telling you and then also what they're not saying. And then that's when you can come in and position yourself as that winning team to support them. But I think, you know, the most important thing you can do is ditch the pitch deck. Nobody, don't do it. You don't have anything to pitch yet because you don't even know what their strategy is. You haven't listened to them. So I just want to, you know, double what you said is that, you know, you need to go in and you just need to listen.
I could not agree more with Jen and Dean. I think back to there's this acronym in the Lilly School teaches LIA, linkage ability or linkage, interest, and ability. And if you don't have all 3 of those, it's really difficult to enter more generally fundraising conversations with a prospective funder. I think in the context of corporate partnerships, I mean, you also have to understand as far as their priorities go, a lot of organizations are also shifting in terms of they want a more holistic experience for their employees. It might be that they're more interested in volunteer opportunities for those employees rather than grant making in the context of grant making. You know, I think also back to just the ecosystem that you're in. So if you're if you're the development director for an organization that's in, you know, local community, I'll use the example of Indianapolis since I'm based here. But there's a whole different layer to what the relationship building looks like in that local context, I think, than the national corporations that you could very well easily go for. But for instance, one of the things that I had learned in a previous role was just, you know, sometimes going up straight to the top of who it is you could potentially reach out to for that grant making opportunity is not the best bet. You're going to want to get as close to home as possible. And so what actually ended up being more beneficial for opportunities for past fundraising efforts was actually employee resource groups and creating relationships with people that were a part of these very local chapters, but did have a budget at a local level because they're trying to improve the livelihood or the experiences of their employees, and that was a very key priority for them. I think as you get to the bigger corporations, obviously that changes a little bit, but yeah, again, I would just echo the focus on the ecosystem, the type of fundraising it is that you're doing. Are you more focused on just, you know, the grant or more holistic? Are there volunteer opportunities at your organization? Are there, you know, are you populating actually on the internet within the right platforms where you can actually be discovered in other more creative means of fundraising that might just not be just your simple submitting a grant proposal, but are you in Benevity Causes, for instance, where your organization is discoverable in employee giving programs. Like there's so many different ways that I think you can diversify your approach when it comes to these partnerships, because then you have an advocate that's within the walls of the corporation that can speak on your behalf, that is not, to Jen's point, just, going in on your first conversation with a pitch deck. And so creating as many links to that company as you can before you're going in, and making sure that there's an element of relevance. So if there is a rejection, that comes about because you think you're aligning with the priorities they have on their website, you don't take it personally, or you feel equipped to go back in once there is real alignment. And then again, the interest, because you might not know interested, and then their capacity to actually give. You don't know where they're at in their budget, who they've already made commitments to, who's similar that they're already funding, that they have those deepened connections with already, that you can either follow as a model, or they've already made that commitment and that's okay. And so you move on to other organizations. I'm rambling at this point. Those are the things.
No, you're not. And you're not. And you got me thinking, sometimes I remember like you'll leave an appointment and you'll realize there's no alignment, right? Like, and the last thing you want to go back to your team is be like, well, like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, we're a health org and they support, international aid. I don't know what to tell you, right? But what I've had over the years, and it's always interesting to me how this works out. There have been 3 instances where I left knowing there was zero alignment, right? Like at that conversation, right? Like okay, right? And I sent them all thank you notes, handwritten thank you notes. And I thank them for their transparency, right? Like they're actually doing you a favor. If they tell you no, like we don't have alignment, don't take that as, oh, I need to work harder, right? No, that's not, it's no, like just take it. It's okay. But I actually followed up and I said, thank you for being honest. Thank you for your transparency. And you know what? 2 of those 3 actually cut us a check because they said, thank you. That's good business. That is exactly how you do good business. Another org, it was a CPG company I went in and talked to about supporting a breast cancer initiative. And they were like, yeah, no, like that we already support, like to your point, like we support another org in this space. So I can't support you. We already support them. And I was like, okay, great. And then I followed up with a thank you note and just thanked them for their time, their transparency, being human and honest. And they called me and they were like, yeah, like you sent us a thank you note for like, and I'm like, I'm not thanking you for like denying us or anything. I'm thanking you for just being real and honest, right? And they actually came on as a sponsor because of that. So I think being able to go in and just be very in gratitude through the whole process, even if there is an alignment, I've seen success from that as well.
Well,
Can I ask Jen a question here?
please do.
So I used to do a lot of that. I agree, it totally works. Where I struggle is there's so many people working remote and you can't just send a letter to a company anymore and expect it to actually hit someone's desk. Because I mean, in my case, my desk changes consistently, even though I'm headquartered in Boulder. I'm typically there, but not always. So it might take a while for me to get back to it. So do you have any other suggestions on how you might create that personal experience beyond email?
Yeah. Sometimes at the end of a meeting, I will ask them, I know we don't have alignment. Are you okay if I still provide you with updates on what's going on? Right? Usually people are going to say yes. Right. And so that gives you the opportunity to confirm what's the best way to contact you. Right. Because people do want to, they want to hear your successes. Right. Like, they're busy. They hear stuff all day long. They want to be a part of that. And so that is usually one way that I can go ahead and get that additional information. And I'll be honest with y'all, the other way is to know the admin. If you have any way to get in touch with who the admin is, they can be your biggest advocate in an organization, either for a new relationship or just keeping communication going to provide value and updates for maybe somebody where there is an alignment right now. And usually too, if there's turnover in management, sometimes, you know, the admin will be there for a while, and they'll be able to support you in your efforts. And those are just two ways that I found that have been really helpful to me.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. And I also want to add one other thing to your previous answer. It is great to go into these calls knowing what you actually want out of this. A lot of times the company might say, we don't have the cash, but we'll send you some products, or hey, we'll give you $10,000 of product. And as great as product is, and sometimes you can turn that into cash, it's not cash to fund employees, your operations, keep the lights on. So it's incredibly important to know what you're willing to settle for it at the low end, just to not waste people's time, because companies, I've been on calls with companies and I stopped doing this and I started asking at the end, this is a cash thing, this is what we need, because I've written large decks and then they've come back with, well, we can support you with this. And I'm like, well, that's not even close to what this deck would even require. And it wasted a lot of my time where I could have been searching for new companies, adding to my pipeline and my funnel. So I think that's a big recommendation of mine, to be crystal clear up front, what you are looking for, even though maybe you're not looking for going in with a direct deck of, we need you to sponsor this program. But knowing what you need for sponsorship so you can keep the lights on, keep employees going.
Yeah, because, I mean, we don't all need 10 pallets of chapstick, right? We don't all need, 10 pallets of paper towels. And where you can appreciate that, unless there's some way to convert that or provide direct sources to the community, it's almost a Band-Aid to the corporation who didn't write the check, right? And there are some instances where, yeah, you know what, I've had to take the chapstick, right? And that's okay. But for the most part, I mean, I 1,000% agree with you. Like, go in knowing, and in nonprofits, it's okay to say no. It's okay to say no. If there is not alignment, there's not alignment. But I think sometimes as nonprofits, we're really hesitant to do that.
I would love to throw in there too. That's where your gift acceptance policy can come in very handy of what you can and cannot accept.
Yes.
I also want to throw out there, Dean, I resonate with just the challenges of being in a remote first environment as well. With fundraising, it's very, Giving Compass is a remote first organization. And, we have a hub in DC and Seattle, but our partners are all over the country. And so that can definitely be a challenge. I would say one of the things that I've found useful in my workflows to, help with that personal connection, not really losing it. And I say this, we're somewhat of a non-traditional organization. So we have a product that we demo relatively often, but we use a tool called Loom for video recordings. You can send, updates on the organization, and there's some level of personal connection. It's still sent in an email, but they can asynchronously. A lot of partners actually appreciate it because, on their own time, they can review and be up to speed. But I think, tech makes a lot of replacements for us that I find questionable right now, but that's one that I enjoy. So I would say that. And if I can, I would love to give an anecdote on just one instance from a grant perspective. When I first came into this role, we had received a rejection for a grant that was, team was very excited about. And I did not get to write this proposal, but I did get to receive it and receive the feedback. And fast forward a couple months later, I'm at a happy hour, and the program officer that was responsible for that decision, I ended up meeting. And when I had introduced myself, he had no idea what proposal I was talking about. And so in that moment, had the opportunity to really have a first connection, had no idea I was going to meet that person in that setting. And we were able to build a relationship several months after that and have been invited to apply for a cycle outside of that original one. And so I would say for those listening, not to underestimate the power of being in the right places. And following and paying very close attention to where the organizations that you are interested or corporations that you are interested in connecting with, where they attend, where else they support, and being a fellow supporter in those issues, because there would have been no way for us to know that encounter or participate without just being in those rooms, which may be easier said than done, and depending on what sort of size budget you have. But in our case, that investment in being in the right rooms ended up as an opportunity that was a previous rejection. And so I would say, being able to push for and ask for support from your board in that sense and dedicating resources to getting in the right rooms is very important.
Yeah, I would like to, if I can jump in here really quickly. We had on our prospect list in Louisiana. And this is one of my favorite stories, y'all. And they were very clear that there was no alignment, right? I was working with a cancer organization. They were not in alignment with, and that's fine, right? Like, that's fine. You can't be all things to all people. And we noticed that they were actually very active in local golf tournaments. And so what we did was we put together a basket full of sunscreen, because working with the American Cancer Society, I mean, right, we want you to protect your skin. And so we sent over a basket filled with like little samples of sunscreen, just some best practices around sun, some really inexpensive visors, right? And we just included a note that said, hey, thank you for your support of the community. Thank you for all the great things you're doing. Please take care of your skin in the process, right? Well, I can tell you that ended up being one of our biggest partnerships 2 years later. And it was because we cared. And it wasn't a sales ploy or anything like that. It was, look, we may not be getting direct dollars from you right now, but we still care about you. And so that came back a couple of years later as one of our biggest partnerships. So take care of them maybe before you ask them to take care of you too.
Well, on the flip side of that, we see a lot of companies come to us who were supporting other organizations similar to us and said, we wrote a big check and we got a report. And so that really kind of, it enforces what you just said, Jen, but you said it on the front side of things, they probably came back to you because they're like, they will be a partner, a partner. And a partner to me, and I start all of my calls like, partner is not just a check. It's us collaborating. It's us doing check-ins. It's us working together. And I feel like they get that sense and they appreciate it. People connect with people. And they were connecting with your basket, and you or your team who sent it, and you're on the radar, and that's exactly how connections are made. And so we see it because other companies or other nonprofits may not be connecting in the right way, and there might not be checking in. And we see companies come to us and say, wow, you guys are actually doing stuff with us. You're giving us what we need. And so that's, you gave a great example of starting a conversation that way.
Yeah. I also have a story on the flip end. A local org said, we were talking, we built the relationship. They helped us buy a truck so we could move food around the community. And then after it was all wrapped with their logo and everything, I called them and said, hey, I'd love for you to come out and look at the truck. I want you to see, come have lunch. Let's look at the truck. And I remember she stood there and she just stared at the truck. She just kept staring at it. And I finally asked her, I was like, is there something wrong? Is there something wrong with the truck? Like, is the logo wrong? Like, what are we doing here? And she's like, you know what? In all the years that I've done this, you're the only person who's ever come out after the gift and said, I want to show you what you did. I want to show you how it's working. And that was a paradigm shift for me right there in that moment. Because I'm thinking, you're a huge organization. You're supporting hundreds of orgs, and yet we're the only one who showed you the truck. Like, okay, so nonprofits, when corporations think of that thing, they want to think of you. And in order for you to be there so that they can think of you, you have to stay top of mind.
Well, this is a master class that you see we're going through right now. Milan, I want to toss back to you as well, because I think so much of what you already emphasize is the educational piece, right? And the awareness. And where do you blend that gap, as what Jen has highlighted so well and Dean's emphasized through his process and how they're building partnerships at Leave No Trace? But it's like that engagement between education, but also listening, right? And at what point do you find that balance where it's like you want to be listening to their priorities, but you also want to be helping improve your awareness? So I guess, how do you start to view that at specifically not just Giving Compass, but throughout your experience in the fundraising and development sector, to where you could help use education as a way to really build trust with your potential partners and donors?
Well, I definitely want to start with just acknowledging Jen. I think you've done such a great job of highlighting the role of just gratitude and thoughtfulness in these interactions and exchanges. I think we can't. There's no such thing as exhausting that. There have been plenty of times where we were the only folks invited to a conference or a seminar, and we're the only ones that even thought to bring a thank you note before attending. And so and that being the only reason why that sponsor reached out to us for the future. But I would say, so Zach, so much of this work, I think, is connected to who we are as people and humans. And, we remember what makes us warm and fuzzy, and we remember what doesn't, or we don't remember what doesn't. And I don't think it can be overstated. We remember how people make us feel, and just leaning into that in these encounters and experiences. As far as the education piece goes, I think it starts with internal clarity. I think being very, very clear on not only what it is that you need, but what it is that services the mission that you've decided to embark on, that sets you up and prepares you for the best, that gives you the best landscape to go into these conversations. Because I think people can also feel when things are not unclear, and that's the signal for when there's no alignment. That being said, I think clarity around not only just your mission, and Dean has already alluded to this earlier, but clarity about your ask. And sometimes I think one of the challenges I've seen in different organizations is just having too many options. Even once you've done that discovery and like what could be, and a lack of comfort in leaning into and suggesting or recommending what it is that that you need, and being very clear about that. Because I think also these corporations are looking to be able to speak to impact. They want to understand, to Jen's point as well, what has this resulted in? And a lot of times, I think if we're trying to contort ourselves and shapeshift into what it is we think that an organization or a company wants, that's when the mission drift happens. And that's when we aren't able to report on the impact that they might be looking to do. I think also having clarity on those KPIs going into the conversation is, not only sets you up for success, but in the post-award process, you're not, fighting yourself, to say what it is that you set out to do, or deliver on the numbers that are involved in a lot of cases. As far as the research piece, I mean, I think there are a lot of tools available. We've had great discussions about, even with Cadenza, you guys are able to crowdsource a lot of opportunities that were not even on our radar. And so I will give that little plug there to you all. But, other platforms like a Candid or GuideStar, or, even going to when it's a corporate foundation, or folks are seeing what 990s, and understanding like, where is the certain information that I need to know, even if this is a valid prospect. We spend a lot of time on research before executing, exerting a lot of energy, because again, we're a very, very small team. Yeah, those are my thoughts just there. I would invite Jen and Dean if there's anything I'm missing there, or if I'm wrong too.
Well, I'll pry it up to you, because Jen, I'm going to tee you guys both up for this. Of like, one of the greatest emphasis I've heard about this, even with Cadenza as an AI platform, if there's so many things that AI can't and shouldn't replace and that it will never be able to place, but also it's going to create more clutter, more noise, more automated emails going out there. And you're seeing it in the B2B sales world where our contacts that we're reaching out to are getting overwhelmed by these messages that are being thrown in their face. So I love the emphasis on, hey, where can we use AI to help reduce some more of the administrative tasks that allow us to be more human and that allow us to really highlight the relationships that we're building there. Jen, I'd just be curious what your thoughts and maybe warnings or distractions that you've seen of people when you know that these new tools and technologies are available.
I think it's like in any, it's tempting to like, chase the shiny, like what's new and I'm just a advocate of focus on your mission, share your story, and bring people along, right? And that comes from being human, right? That comes from having clarity, to your point. And so one of my nonprofit heroes is Robert Eager, and he started DC Central Kitchen. And he always says, chase money, you're going to run forever. Chase mission, and the money will come to you. And I've seen it 1,000 times. And so where technology can be helpful, I don't believe that in any place it will ever replace the human aspect of the nonprofit work that we do and the importance of it.
Dean, thoughts?
No, I totally agree. I think, Zach, we talked offline a week ago about this. I would love to replace a couple of my mundane tasks of deck writing and note taking, which I've already done, but a couple other, minor things. We've been using AI a little bit more on some of our newsletters and that sort of thing, people getting inundated. We are trying not to overspam any of our partners, but we use mailing softwares and that sort of thing. And so how do we make it so they open it? Checking the open rate, making it more personable because people are connecting with people. And Jen, you just said it exactly right on the head. And so I don't think it'll ever replace, and I hope it never replaces the human interaction. That's my favorite part of the job. Checking in, conceptualizing ideas, that sort of thing. You can use it to help expand on an idea, help shape something, a little bit of format. I do that a little bit when have been sitting with something for too long. I've got maybe 3 decks right now open on my desktop that I am stuck on because I'm getting writer's block. It's not that I don't know what I want to put in there. I'm just not sure how I want to put it in yet. And I need to get them out. So I need to keep rolling. And so I will use AI to help me build out a concept that I've already created and been talking to a potential partner about. But then I'll bring it back into my own words, my own writing, my own human form, because that's what they connected with in the first place.
Awesome. Well, I know we have about 10 minutes left here, so I want to end with really just practical advice of, if we had a big final takeaway that you'd give for someone really trying to expand their corporate giving strategy, how to be able to establish new meaningful relationships with corporate partners, foundations, everyone who is going to fall within that kind of development director's purview. I guess, what would you advise to any fundraiser who's either just getting started in their career or is kind of facing a lot of those asks and just feeling the pressure and stress right now that comes with the role that we all signed up for within fundraising, but also just the time that we are in right now and it being as crazy as it is. Why don't, Milan, I'll start with you and then we'll kind of go down to Dean and Jen. You could bring us home.
Thanks, Zach. And thank you for this session. This has been fantastic. Love learning from Jen and Dean. I would tie back to an earlier statement just around, reframing, thinking about your ask as an invitation and setting yourself up to make that invitation. I think for emerging fundraisers, being creative about how you're making those connections, I think can set you apart. I don't, you know, I use LinkedIn in almost every relationship I have with prospective funders, with supporters in similar issues and cause areas, whether or not we're going to pursue a funding relationship. I think having a layer of connectivity is very important. And also, I think the warmth that you can create by just a simple check-in with someone when there's no transaction that's going to be made is not something to be taken for granted. We have some partners that want to meet on a weekly basis. We have other partners that, are on a quarterly basis. And for the ones that we don't have a relationship with yet, or are starting one, I make sure I am managing my expectations about how often they want to hear from me, and what it is that they, and just who they are and who the person is showing up in that role. And in addition to the, the expectations that that company has for their social impact. So I'd say that's my holistic plug and takeaway to leave there.
I think, being on this, Milan, Jen, I hope your partners are watching this, your bosses, you're both extreme experts in what you do. I've learned a little bit today as well. You've reinforced a lot of my work, which is positive. I'm self-taught in this whole entire process. I love it. I knew I'd enjoy it. I kind of created the job I wanted. My bosses let me. They let me trial and error this whole thing. And I think a lot of people who are newer to this type of work, try it. You're going to have successes and you're going to have failures, and I believe heavily in getting outside. I work for an outdoor organization. Getting outside, taking a breath of fresh air, getting some vitamin D, standing in the sun for 5 minutes. I did it earlier this morning. It can reset you, and because not everything's a success, but when there is a success, I celebrate every aspect of it. And so that comes down to having that, even getting the phone call, like, oh my God, we've got a call with this company. And then I just sent them the deck and they're super excited and we're going to move forward. I spread that through my bosses as well because I'm happy about it. And I want to hold on to those moments, those even breadcrumbs. We don't even have the check in the door and I'm celebrating the success. And it's okay. And I'm used to it getting stopped right there at times too. But then celebrating the contract signed. We've got the check. Now we've done the project. Every little milestone is a success for me. And I want to connect with my work even deeper. And so celebrating those, however you want to do it. Sometimes for me, it's just maybe leaving 30 minutes early and getting out on a hike. Those things are really important for me. But I think I go back to my first answer here is you want to make sure that you start creating comfort in making the ask for cash, or else you will end up with 2 pallets of paper towels. And so I think that's my biggest advice here. But this has been a great pleasure for me to be on with both of you here, or all 3 of you.
Thank you all. This has just been so invigorating. I don't really know that I have too much to add. I will, like, to everything that y'all have said. I have a win board, and it's a cork board. And every win, I don't care if it's that, my copy paper arrived on time and I needed it. Every little win goes on the board because as development staff, you have a hard job. You have a hard job. You want to keep the mission going. Everybody's asking you to do something, right? It's all revolved around money. And so making sure that in those moments where you're just like, I can't do this, I just stare at the win board and I remember all those wins because they do come, few and far between sometime in development. But boy, when they do, don't forget them, write them down, put them up on that board and be able to go back to that moment and just channel that. That's that joy, but also to take time for yourself, just like do it. Like I schedule a wellness hour for myself every single day. Does that mean I'm going to go run? No. That means I'm going to get away from my desk. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to stand in the sun, right? As development staff, knowing that turnover is like every 12 months in an organization, we have to be very intentional about taking care of ourselves. So those are just the few things that I do, keep myself going.
Well, again, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate everyone on today's panel for offering their insights. I think it really does take a village. And I think one of the greatest superpowers or advices that I would leave people with is just the ability to ask for help, the ability to be clear with your ask, the ability to reach out to people within your network, gain those referrals is really one of the greatest superpowers that you could have. And remembering that you are providing a tremendous amount of value to these corporations who are genuinely looking for ways to engage their employee base, to connect to their community. You have a unique offering that is special and that they want to know. So the more that you could just embody that, and I love how so much of this kind of we got back to human, we kept it with our technology and AI and how we're using some of these new tools to give us back that time in our days to just be human. So thank you all so much for joining us on today's panel discussion and for offering your feedback for so many fundraisers who are out there just looking for what's the next step and what's the process or the guidelines that I should follow. So thank you again. This will be recorded and shared amongst everyone on today's panel, and we'll share it out with video clips over social media as well. So again, can't thank you guys enough, and we're looking forward to staying in touch. If you guys are interested in learning more specifically about any of our panelists today, they can connect with you on LinkedIn. I'll have information available for people to either get back in touch with, whether it's Giving Compass, Leave No Chase, all the incredible work that they are doing at Generous Living right now. Jen is an amazing consultant as well. And I'll finish my little rant and tangent there. So everyone, thank you guys so much, and look forward to staying in touch. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zach.